Hey, Sister Neysha, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you, Philip?
Good. It's so good to have you. I told you years ago when I was starting this thing that I wanted you on, and you were like, "Absolutely not." Well, I
You're
roped
right.
you. I roped you in, and I got you here for a very important podcast, one I'm really, really excited about. So, just so people know a little about you, you live in Alexandria, Louisiana. You've coached for 14 years across every single division. You've been the coordinator at the Pentecostals of Alexandria for 12 years. You have a
Along with my
massive,
husband, yes.
along with Bill. Bill is a fantastic coach as well, and does. I'm guessing he does just is right there with you every step of
All
the
the way.
way, all the
All-
way. I've seen the two of you work in tandem, and you guys are an awesome coaching team.
Definitely a team effort.
It is. It truly is. You can't do it by yourself. You probably could do it by yourself, but I
Don't want
know.
to try.
um, I'm so glad to have you. I've known you since I was a baby. My parents have known you forever, and I grew up in Alexandria, and so it's really cool that we've gotten to stay close through Bible quizzing, even though I live 800 miles away now.
That's right. We go way back before Bible quizzing. Your little pool parties disturbed my studying in college sometimes.
That's
I
right.
had to
I
poke at you. I had to poke at you.
I had some great birthday parties, and I probably did bother you a lot,
Nah, not
but
really.
it was a wonderful time. And then you met Bill, and you moved away.
Yep.
Um, so okay, first question I have for you. So you've been coaching for 14 years, and what drew you into Bible quizzing?
Sure. We were beginning our homeschool journey. You mentioned my husband, Bill, and we had 4 children. So we were just beginning our homeschool journey, and that was not at all about secluding our children from activities, but we were looking for church involvement for them. Hopefully, something that would contribute to their education, contribute to their spiritual development. I had heard the statistics of Bible quizzing that everybody's heard and how it develops leaders and keeps kids in the church. And we wanted that. We wanted that for our kids. Obviously, right now in the middle of the corona pandemic, people's views of homeschooling are very different. and I'd like to say that quarantine is definitely not the best way to experience your first homeschooling experience. If you happen to be doing that with your kids right now, it's not an accurate representation for sure. But we were looking for age appropriate spiritual training for our kids, and we wanted something our kids could excel at. As parents, we were already learning what they were not good at. And so we were looking for something that they could be good at and that would be good for them. And looking back, one of my favorite things about our journey through discovering Bible quizzing was the progression in that age appropriateness.
Hmm.
Um, I know junior coaches that hate senior quizzing, and I know senior coaches that hate junior quizzing. We all know that, and you've already mentioned that I've been involved on all 4 levels. To me, the divisions are very different, but in age appropriate ways, and that's one of the things that I've learned to love about Bible quizzing is its appropriateness for each age division, and each one trains leaders.
I agree completely. It is interesting because you kind of you straddle the fence on both sides. You're so involved with both still, where most are mainly focused on one, where you're really involved across the entire spectrum still. And that I'm guessing you did that for a while because you had kids across the spectrum. That's
Right.
right.
Right. It started out that way because, with my 4 children, they have about 5.5 years of age difference. And so, we had kids across divisions. I had, years that I was not able to watch my children quiz because I couldn't go between divisions. Yeah, and I thought my involvement may decrease a little bit on the junior level after my last one moved up, but that's been 4 or 5 years ago, I think now, and I've been coaching junior teams the entire time. I think the best way to prep senior quizzers is to have them go through juniors. Junior quizzing fosters memorization, discipline. You practice recall, you build those skills, but senior quizzing, if you don't have that foundation, then it becomes a little more difficult to foster understanding and application if you don't have the discipline of memorization.
Right.
So And then on the senior level, you get to research and build reasoning.
Hmm. I always say it's really hard for someone, a 15-year-old with responsibility and things, to just jump into Bible quizzing and to have that in their lives. And it seems like
A
mostly
huge hurdle.
there are exceptions, plenty of exceptions,
Sure.
but the ones that age out and have a great career are ones that started when they were small. Most of them, a lot of them, you hear
A lot of them.
kin.
There are exceptions, and we've experienced that. You know,
Mhm,
I've had young quizzers come to me at 12, 13 years old and really surprise me. And it's wonderful when that happens. I encourage it.
mhm,
But, you know, the over the years, a lot of them are long termers, at
right.
least starting at 8 or 9, you know.
How many how many quizzers since you started and since you were involved? Because I know your Carson is your oldest son, and he was kind of one of the older ones for a long time, and Abigail and Kellen. How many quizzers have you been really close to that have aged out? Do you have a count?
I wish I had kept more accurate statistics. Just trying to go through quickly: Kellen, Abigail, Carson, Howard, the two Stewart girls,
Jared.
Jared. Yes. Um, I know there are more that just aren't coming to me
Right, I put you on the
at,
spot. I'm
at
sorry.
this second. That's okay. It's okay. Megan Ray, Trace Constant as well.
Hmm.
Um, you know, several of those, probably at least 10.
See, I've only experienced it like just one or two, and I really, I've got two big ones, not this year, but the next year. And how do you deal with your quizzers aging out? Any advice?
Get them back involved.
That's a great, that's great advice. So just
Right. And then
don't
if
let them
they're
get
not
away.
involved, right, don't let them get away. I mean, I've got some getting away from me. They're still involved, but you know, encourage their ministry wherever they're getting involved. Jared's very involved in music ministry now. I have some involved on drama levels within the church. Some working with youth. So a lot of good ministry opportunities outside of quizzing, but I never want to let go of them.
Right. Now, and I grew up there at POA, which is a huge church, obviously. And then we go to a church now, and when we joined here, we ran about 120 people. And just experiencing both, which 120 is not small by any means, but it's a lot smaller than what I was used to. And what I kind of figured out is that at the smaller churches, there's more to do because there's less people and there's more responsibility. People need to do things. But at a church like POA, there's just more to do. There's just so many things. It may not be exactly what you want to do. It may not be exactly what you feel like you're best at, but there is something somewhere. There is a ministry that does have a need. And so it's so cool that you're able to just really plug in your kids after they age out somewhere, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Like I've said many times on this podcast, I quizzed at POA in 2003, 2004, 2005, and the numbers then were much smaller than you guys, the numbers now at that church. What was quizzing like there when you joined, and how have you seen it change over the past 14 years?
Sure. Obviously, I didn't have to start from scratch. You know, you've already said there was an established program, policies and procedures mostly in place. As the program grew, we've tweaked a few things like qualification for tournaments, et cetera. Because of the size of the program, we had to make some changes like that. But we already had monetary support of our leadership. I mean, we had those things already in place. You mentioned the senior program that was there. We didn't have a junior program at the time that you were involved. And we became involved on the junior level because that was the age of our kids.
Hmm.
And at the time, the POA program was being run by a former quizzer, as you know, your former coach, Gerald Hill,
Hmm.
coaching on the senior level. And most of our active quizzers were aging out, close to aging out. And we were having trouble recruiting, in my opinion, mainly due to Messiah Easter Productions.
Hmm.
Um, it's a huge endeavor that our church was doing at the time every year. Um, Over the years, and I did not write these exact years down, but over the years we went to an every other year thing. Even had, I think, a longer period in there of maybe 3 or 4 years where we didn't have a production, then came back with Above All a few years later. So as that program was a little bit of a sabbatical, we had families who were looking for involvement for their kids. So we had a few years in there where we had our faithful, what I call our transitional quizzers. Lovely Kellen Constant. She was always looking for a teammate in those years.
Mm-hmm.
Love Kellen and her faithfulness to this program. She stuck it out in a very difficult period for our program. Um, and so that's what it was like when we started. And then about 2 years after, life situations took Gerald to another church, and we were asked by him and by the pastoral staff to take a leadership position. That was around 2009 or 10. We started with Heroes of the Faith.
Mm. It's a
So
great year
I'm
at
sure you've
first.
heard all the stories about Heroes of Faith. It was an ironic start for us. I believe the um, the stat is maybe 50% more word count
Wow.
that year, even though the verses were the same,
Mm.
around 50% more word count. We started with a 7-year-old, and there was no,
Golly.
I think that might have been the first year of beginners, maybe on an extravaganza level, but not a national level, somewhere in there. So we had a 7-year-old quizzer quizzing juniors because he didn't have a beginner teammate. And
Mm-hmm.
so he learned, the 300 verses in Heroes of the Faith,
Wow.
basically equivalent to 450 verses as a 7-year-old. And we kept hearing these, this is so hard. Why is this so hard? Why is this study so difficult? It's so
You
many
didn't know any
words.
better. You...
We didn't know any better. And it was an awesome start for us. We didn't find out until the next year that, oh, this is why everybody said, because he actually went back to beginners the next year to quiz with a sibling. And
Mm-hmm.
so he went from that 300 verse count with 50% more words down to 200 verses in beginners. And that's when we realized this is why people were complaining.
Mm-hmm.
This is why.
I'm sure.
Um, right. So, but anyway, a few years after that, we were transitioning quizzers from juniors to seniors. The gap years were gone, and we had quizzers in all 4 divisions.
And it just seems like it just keeps growing, and it's not unusual for your church to have multiple teams trophy at nationals across every single division. I mean, it's so awesome what you guys have built, like truly a program with many quizzers coming through and coaches and people that know what it takes and investment, right?
Right, right. We've been very blessed with that.
So we talked a little bit about the different divisions. So what is your mindset and your goals for each of the 4 divisions? How do they change as you coordinate your whole church? So I know you work with coaches individually, most likely, and the quizzers. So can you go through those 4 divisions and how it changes for you?
Sure. Um, Originally, I think you asked something about our program's growth, and I wanted to talk about that for a minute. But one of my mottos is that anything worth doing is worth doing right.
Right.
And so we're not afraid of hard work at POA. And also, we acknowledge that in a certain sense, success breeds success. So
Mm-hmm.
when teams win, people are attracted to that and they want to be a part of something good. And that goes back to Brother Faubert's line, trips, trophies, and telephone numbers.
Hmm.
If people are winning trophies, people look and say, oh, I want to be a part of that. And if they are originally attracted by a trophy, that's fine with me, because if they stick around, it's not going to be about the trophies anymore. They're going to understand the purpose of what we're doing. And so I've already told you that the sabbatical from Easter Productions, I felt like contributed to our growth, and we never wanted to take away from the drama team. The goals of
Mm-hmm.
Bible quizzing and the goals of drama team are different. Developing leaders versus drama team is very outreach based. We never want to take away from that outreach based ministry, but when our church took that sabbatical, it allowed families to become involved in something different. We did have some success over the years, and it was a process going through the 4 divisions. But looking back, I think beginners, the goals there are exposure, developing a love for the word, and to a certain sense, are they old enough to sit at the table, hold the buzzer, listen,
Amen.
remember the verse reference, respond,
Amen.
pick up the microphone,
Preach it. Keep going.
not not chew on the buzzer.
Oh, that's a good one. Um,
That's a good story. We did actually have my youngest daughter chewing on the buzzer at Extravaganza. Brother Green had to ask her to put down the buzzer because she was chewing on it. So great stories coming through beginners, but that's where it all starts, and that's where they're exposed and they learn a love for the word. For juniors, a high concentration on memorization, discipline, making that a daily process, making it a habit, learning well, referencing, um, learning patterns and questions. I'm a grammar person. I'm a grammar and English person. So as soon as they're able to understand that, I start pushing those grammar patterns where they understand verbs and nouns and objects, and that helps them predict patterns and questions.
so you really start the junior level.
I do. I
Some
do.
I got seniors that I have to just I got seniors that I got to
I
push that into.
absolutely. And I say I start that with juniors who start in juniors. I've walked seniors through grammar who've never had it. I still push grammar with 15, 16, 17-year olds that didn't have me as a coach in juniors. But one of my favorite ages to work with is those older juniors, because I feel like there's a natural shift in their thinking at that point. And I love it when quizzers start asking, but wait, why is this a two-part? Because the answer to the second question really could go with the first. And they ask why, but I don't think we're done with why until we go to the next verse. That's still part of the why. I love it when quizzers start asking that question. And all quizzers who learn the material do that. Now, whether they do that at 8 or 9 or 10 years old, which it's going to be a long route in juniors if they're asking those questions that early.
Right.
But, whether they do that at 8, 9, 10 years old, or whether they're 12, 13, or 14 before they make that transition in their thinking, they start to ask why, but why, but why? And that's the age that I love to work with. But I've had juniors not finish their season well because they started to overthink those questions. And when they start to ask those questions, I don't dumb it down for them. I start transitioning them to appropriately make senior questions, even if that means maybe they're not as competitive as they would like to be at the end of their junior career. You can't control when a kid starts to make that transition in their thinking. And I think we have to seize the opportunity when they start asking those questions, because that's what we want them to do. We want them to seek understanding of the word. And of course, I said that's my favorite age, but we also know that intermediate quizzers are a difficult age as well. We love them, but Brother Tenney used to say when a kid turns 13, you bury them and dig them up when they turn 20. Brother Tenney was the Louisiana District Superintendent. So, teenagers are difficult, but in that intermediate division, we want the word to be a rock for them. We want them to seek understanding. Going back to the grammar, one of the things that really indicates to me that a quizzer is understanding a verse is when they start to be able to answer out of order fluidly. They're not just quoting the word. It's not rote memory anymore, but they understand it. And that's why they're able to answer those questions out of order, because they know what's being asked. They understand the concept, not just what's being said and repeating it.
I want to add something to that. I completely agree with you that is kind of like a step up, where when they start doing that in practice, and coaches, quizzers practice it, like in practice, answer every question you possibly can in order. Because if you don't practice it and work on it, you're not going to get good at it. But then
Right. And I make them do it, even if the quoting of the verse clarifies itself and answers the question. That is correct. But let's go back and talk about answering this out of order, because I want you to understand. And most of the time when I make them do that, there's a light bulb that goes off. Oh, I quoted the verse, but I didn't understand it. And
You're
that's
exactly
that's
right.
why we answer those questions. One of the reasons why we answer questions, because it fosters understanding.
And then the next level to me that I saw a few years ago in some of my kids is when they just naturally, without missing a beat, replace pronouns. Not even
Yes.
having, when not obviously not when quoting on quotations, but when answering multiples or directs or anything
Right.
like that, they
Not
just.
just he referring to David,
Mm-hmm.
but taking and putting in David in that quoting of that verse, or putting in mine enemies,
Mm-hmm.
not having to make that reference back. And I'm not saying making the reference back is wrong, but when you see quizzers start to answer with those pronoun substitutions, it demonstrates a different level of understanding.
Right. And I encourage, there's another thing, encourage, work on it. Work on your
Right.
pronouns, study your pronouns, because if you don't know who he is or who they are, how can you say that you understand it?
You're missing out.
You're
Missing
missing
out.
out.
And that other level of understanding senior questions is when you have question writers that consistently replace those pronouns in the question, and that throws quizzers. You're not looking for a verse that says David said.
Mm-hmm.
It may say he said, or the
Right.
Lord said, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
That Eric
looking for
Forbes.
concepts rather than looking for exact phrases.
Right. Eric Forbes and I are obviously close. He's on the podcast all the time, but he said before this year he thinks the most difficult part of Psalms would be pronouns this year, just because
It is. It
there's
has been difficult.
it definitely has. There's pronoun specifications 10 verses earlier, and
Hmm.
and obviously every me and my and is pretty much David, but a lot of them and him and things are just kind of hard to figure out sometimes. But um, I think that
But interesting with it following doctrine too, because there were a lot of out of study pronouns in doctrine. So,
very true. There was a lot of unspecified. That's very true.
right, that too.
So it's been an interesting year, but I think our question writers have latched onto that. A lot of our question writers have written a lot of pronoun based questions to
Right,
challenge kids and make sure that they do know hey, you got
right.
to know this pronoun. So I think we've done a good job with that. All right.
I don't think I
You're going,
covered
yeah,
the
you
experience division.
right, which is my favorite division, but
Understandably, understand, and
but
it's where
right.
I've been coaching primarily for the past 5 years as my kids came through that division. I have my youngest daughter with her first year and experience this year, but the experience division is where they concrete what they've learned. They get to push themselves. They get to own their study patterns and habits. Um, Hopefully, at this point, it's not the parents pushing them anymore, but they have their own goals about what quizzing means to them and how much they want to succeed in it competitively. Um, and they're transitioning into ministry. I encourage my experienced quizzers to start giving back, start, if not coaching younger ones, then at least mentoring younger ones, meeting with them, quoting, offering to quote younger quizzers, encouraging those younger quizzers, and giving back to the ministry where they can.
That's wonderful. Yes, and
Preparing for that transition because it doesn't last forever. And so, you don't want it to be a devastating end when your quiz career is over. You want them to be prepared for what their next step is.
right, and I feel like whatever stage you're in is your favorite and what you think you want to do forever. So like most kids in the youth group that want to do ministry want to be a youth pastor. Most
Right.
in junior high, if they have a youth pastor, they want to be a junior high youth pastor. And most experienced quizzers want to be an experienced coach, or and so on and so forth. So it's so good to plug those in with the younger ones, and sometimes you may have to kick them in the butt to get them to do it, but a lot
Right.
of
And
times
then they ask, did I ever do that? Was I like that as a junior quizzer?
right.
Yes.
But then it can also foster like, oh, like I do like working with the younger ones, or maybe I didn't think that I would enjoy working with the younger ones since it's so different than the way I quit experience quizzing. But they start, they can discover some of the things that they like that they wouldn't think that they normally would.
Right.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's good. All right. So thank you for going through those four. Yeah, it's incredible what that there's not many coaches that have had as much success across all four. So, and I
It's been
completely,
fun.
yeah, it was fun. So another big part of building a program and having a great ministry to develop kids is having the right coaches. So as someone with, you're blessed to be in a spot where you have a lot of members of the congregation, but that doesn't mean you have a plethora of qualified quiz coaches.
Right.
So what do you look for in a quizzing coach?
um, Well, first and foremost is obviously stability within the church, and somebody that you feel confident and your pastor feels confident is a good person to mentor young people. And that doesn't mean that that person needs to be perfect or to have never made mistakes, but somebody that's on the right track and that your pastor approves of to mentor your young people. And that's always first, because the last thing we want is someone who's going to lead youth down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
But then past that, the biggest thing that I look for is passion and willingness to invest. Um, I need somebody who has time to spend with kids, somebody who will take the initiative to call those kids, quote them, schedule practices outside of our weekly program practices, call them, help them refocus when they stop learning, um, help them through a rough spot when they hit that wall. A junior quizzer moving up to intermediate and they're used to learning 300 verses and they get the 300 verse mark and there's still another 120, 150 verses to go. You know, I can't do that for every single quizzer. I wish I could. I'm a very hands-on coordinator. I like to know where every single quizzer in my program is. And for the most part, I do know where they are in memorization, but I can't do that without what my coaches do with my quizzers every week. I need people who are willing to invest in these kids and take a personal interest. Of course, they have to be willing to travel
Mm-hmm.
because quiz tournaments involve travel. And we had to really acknowledge, especially this year, this was a huge transition year for us. We had, I think, 4 juniors move up into our senior program. We began this year with 16 senior quizzers, and we were,
We did too. Wow.
yes, we talked about that before, that you and I had the same exact number of senior quizzers this year. But at the beginning of the year, my husband and I were looking at each other going, where are the coaches coming from? And we had to tell some parents, I'm sorry, I don't have an outside coach. You're going to have to help us. Coaches that really wanted somebody else. And I wish I had that for them, because there's advantages and disadvantages to parents coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I've always coached my kids, and I think that's worked out well for the most part. I've enjoyed it at least. But there's been times that I wished there was that third party coach that could help and encourage my kids. And I want that. If a parent wants that, then I want that for their kid. But we had a time this year where we were just pulling for people,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to really think about how we were going to train coaches. And that's why willingness to invest came above experience or knowledge for us, because we just needed people who were willing to do the job. It's wonderful when you have those former senior quizzers with the knowledge and experience that can walk kids through it as they walked through it. But it's not a necessary factor when I'm choosing a coach.
I would much rather have someone that is willing to dive in and invest in the kids and to do whatever it takes to learn and to set their kids up to succeed and maybe make some mistakes and mess up along the way.
You learn
That
from those.
Right, than a former quizzer whose heart isn't in it and is just doing the bare minimum. Like
Right.
you want investment. I completely
Right.
agree. Going back to coaching your own kids, just this is the way I think about it. My first preference would be for my kids would be someone else that I completely trust, that is fully invested, that knows what they're doing, that knows what they're doing. That would be my first preference. Then me, because if someone, because if I don't want just anyone coaching my kids, I want someone that's going to be invested and do their best. Um, and we're blessed to have a beginner coach this year, first year, and it's the same. It's what we've been saying, that she doesn't have knowledge and experience. She's gaining it quickly, and she's super invested, and we love that. And that's what I would prefer, because I as a dad, I want to see it I want to work with her, and I want other people to push her and see other perspectives. But there's nothing wrong, obviously, with coaching your own kids, and I may have to one day. So
Right.
I'm probably gonna have to come to you.
Well, it was interesting for us, and one of the reasons why I would have liked for my kids to be coached, and some of my kids were coached by other people along the way. I'm terrified of leaving someone out, but Amy Freeman
Mhm.
immediately comes to mind. She coached both of my girls in the intermediate division when they quizzed with the Freeman boys and did an excellent job. And I was thankful for those years for them to get a different perspective from a different coach and learn. But with us homeschooling, my kids got an awful lot of mom. And so if they get mom in quizzing and mom at home for school, that's a lot of mom some days.
It's a lot of mom. But it's a good mom, so you're fine. um,
Debatable. Debatable.
oh goodness. By the way, speaking of going to you for advice, I will tell everybody that the first person I ran to when I found out I was going to be a quiz coach was you and your husband. Those are the first people I was like, Neysha.
I remember that.
Yeah, we were in
How
town.
many hours did we spend that night?
Oh goodness, we went to McAllister's and we talked about quiz. And I told you at that meeting, I was like, I've got these two kids that have a lot of potential, and I really see a lot in them. And ends up that was Sherwin and Avery, and they really have lived up to their potential.
Absolutely.
And I'm proud of them. But I told you at that meeting, I
You
said that
did?
these kids are surprising me. So, and you gave me a lot of wonderful advice, you and your husband, and it really did help us get Kickstarter on the right on the right foot. I was a senior quizzer, and I started coaching juniors, years after I had been involved in quizzing, and so like it was also different. And I was like, that's not how I remember it. And then it was because I was never part of juniors, and I was like, how do I remember it being that way? But I got the hang of it with a lot of help from you guys and a lot of help from Sister Jean here in Illinois and Darren Venus here in Illinois and many more people. Just so blessed to have a quiz community that invests in younger coaches and younger people. Um,
Right.
so
I grew up in the Louisiana district, and just few and far between are the coaches who are not willing to help you to the point of beating their teams. It happens over and over again. It's about the kids. It's not about coaching and winning anymore. It's about what's the right decision for these kids and how can we invest in these kids so that when this is all over, they're kingdom minded and they're reinvesting in other children.
I completely agree. If you invest in other kids that aren't just yours, it'll come back to bless you 100% and to bless more beyond just you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've gotten to know you a lot better. Thank you for sharing everything. Now, I want to get to a hot topic. That is probably the reason I convinced you to do this.
You're right, because
Is
I didn't
in
want to talk about me.
well, I took advantage of it. I wanted you to
You
talk about
did.
you.
I've been manipulated.
But this weekend there was a really important event, and it was the very first ever virtual Bible quizzing tournament.
It was. It
So
was. First ever.
please tell us about this weekend.
Okay. Overall, it was a wonderful experience. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I think our Louisiana people were well prepared for the differences of a virtual program, and there are a lot of differences. And I have to say that I'm really proud of how our coaches and our quizzers dove in and handled those differences. But it all started with COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order. And that happened very shortly after we got home from Chase Marshall, which you were at. That was the
Mhm.
last physical quiz tournament that we were able to attend, was the Chase Marshall tournament in Indianapolis. And we got home from that and we were preparing our juniors for extravaganza. And I believe that event ended up being officially canceled on Tuesday before we were supposed to leave on Thursday. Quizzers
Wow.
and coaches,
Mm.
parents struggling with the times. How are we going to keep our quizzers motivated? And initially, I think everybody's reaction was to back up and talk about why we quiz, The memorization is the top priority. It was very easy to point out how we should be doing what we do in Bible quizzing, even though we were not going to be able to meet in person in large groups for a while. It was a focus shift. It was back to the basics, and we wanted to make sure we were doing it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I kept, when we had to cancel events and even got to the point of canceling our local quiz practices because we were even over the limit of 50 people,
Mm-hmm.
and the originals was 250 people, and then it was 50 people, and we were over that. And then it very shortly became you couldn't meet in groups of 10 or more, and we
Mm-hmm.
were over that in just number of quizzers. So we didn't know when we were going to be able to meet again. Um, we told people, please be patient with us. We haven't ever led a quiz program through a pandemic before.
Right.
We don't know what we're going to do. What are we going to do? We have no idea. We're reacting through this as everybody else was, but we knew it was coming, and it happened after a time. Kids get bored with quoting every day. Um, they think they've learned what they can from the verses, especially if they've finished material, and people start to ask, how much longer before it's okay for us to tell our kids probably nothing going to happen this year? How long do we wait before that becomes an option? Um, they're not motivated to chart and memorize
Mm-hmm.
without the promise of some competition. And so we started thinking about, why do we answer questions? Why do we want to answer questions instead of just promoting the memorization? And that was to reveal understanding, of course, not to just demonstrate a trivial knowledge of how many times a word occurs, but we wanted to promote understanding. And as things progressed, we realized how much we were missing that. We were missing that for understanding purposes. We were missing the interaction with people. We were missing our kids getting to be with like-minded people and encourage one another. And so why did this happen? Why did the virtual tournament happen? Because we wanted to get back to some of those benefits from quizzing that we were really, really missing. The fellowship, the motivation, that accountability that the quizzers provide for each other. So that's the why of why it happened. And Brother Gary Masters is our senior district coordinator in Louisiana. Brother Brad Masters is our junior district coordinator in Louisiana. And I forget how exactly who contacted who first. Sister Christy Rocco is our beginner quizmaster. Of course, she comes out of the Denham Springs longstanding program led by the Martins there. But it became a big conference call, and we said, what are we going to do? And Brad said, brother Brad Masters said, well, I found this site called buzzin.live, and I think we might can make it work for quizzing. Why don't you check it out and let's see if we can do this? And of course, Brother Gary says, whatever y'all think y'all can make work, I'm behind it. Just don't make me do anything other than read the questions. I don't understand all that technical. So Brother Brad's background is, of course, very technical. He's an IT person for a community college. And so we started digging, uh, investigating video conferencing. He was already familiar with a couple of those that he was using at work. We started experimenting with video conferencing, looking at the buzzin.live site and the settings on it, trying to figure out how we could make it work for quizzing. Um, we tested it. That was our first big step. We tested it with a scrimmage between Alexandria teams and Denham Springs teams. And it seemed to work. And so we got really excited and started dividing up the teams between Sister Christy and I and contacting them to let people know that there were tools and there were opportunities for them to connect with their quizzers and keep them motivated during this time. At this point, we're not even thinking of a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We're just thinking people are meeting with their quizzers through video conferencing. Everybody's getting discouraged. What can we do to provide coaches with tools and opportunities to keep quizzers in the work? Because we want them to finish the year. We want them to finish memorization. We want them to get all they can from Psalms this year. And so we started contacting all these coaches, having video conference, Sister Christy and I reading questions to them, using BuzzIn.live, just to show coaches what was possible for them to connect with their teams, in hopes that this would keep our teams, we would lower our attrition rate, and we would keep our teams involved for what would happen when restrictions were lifted, and hopefully we will be able to gather at the end of the year. So that's how it started. As time progressed, we realized how long we might be quarantined. The restrictions keep getting extended. We start talking about, can we actually, extravaganzas get canceled, which was a huge blow to motivation on both levels. Our April tournaments, we started looking at those, saying, are we going to even be able to do April tournaments at this point? Both of our April tournaments on junior and senior level were scheduled to happen in the New Orleans or Baton Rouge area.
Yeah.
Thinking, okay, do we change locations? But even if we change locations, people from those areas are still coming to us, realizing we can't do this. We go back to video conferencing and say, we've been doing 2 teams all along. Why can't we do 10? I think we can actually do a tournament this way. And so an interesting thing about BuzzIn.live, if you haven't looked at it yet, it works just like a buzzer system. You go to that site, you put in a game code, the quizmaster hosts the game, the quizzer joins the game. You put in that game code, they hit the buzzer on their phone, and it pops up on your computer and tells you who buzzed in. I think it allows 150 people to be logged in at one time, so technically you could quiz 150 quizzers
That'd be fun.
simultaneously.
We should do that.
Yes, really fun. But we realized very quickly in trying to run practices with BuzzIn.live how dependent we had become on BQ tournaments, which our wonderful sister Ruth Wilson has provided us with. My understanding is her motivation for that program was some lessening of errors in those various positions. Scorekeeper, statistician, timekeeper, buzzer operator, all of those things became very standard within her program. So when you go back to BuzzIn.live, and you have one coach trying to run a video practice, not only are they running a practice through video, which is already new to them, but they suddenly become the quizmaster, the scorekeeper, the buzzer operator, the timekeeper, the foul caller, calling interruption, all of that comes back into play. So you're back to doing everything. And so, of course, I contacted Sister Ruth Wilson. Have you seen BuzzIn.live? She's already working on it. She had
awesome.
already, she's so far ahead of the game. But she was already working on it, had found out the technology that website was using, added that technology to her server, was furiously coding to try to make it work and customize it for Bible quizzing, because BuzzIn.live was great. We ran a lot of practices on it, but it didn't have so many of the capabilities that we were really accustomed to as far as Bible quizzing. So when we started, we wanted to do a tournament. We wanted to do that for our kids, and we were willing to do it with BuzzIn.live. We were just realizing how many people we were going to need to make that happen, or how much practice it was going to take to go back to having to do all of those things separately. And so we decided very early on that we needed to run a virtual tournament with seniors instead of juniors, because seniors are much more familiar with the technology. So many of them just got kicked out of their schools, kicked into virtual learning. Your college students, your high school students are on Zoom calls with their teachers, with their classmates. That technology was very familiar to them, and we felt like we would get a lot of technological familiarity, and we would get more feedback from them about what was working and what wasn't working if we did seniors before we did juniors. And so Sister Ruth at this point had progressed from buzzin.live to a virtual quiz room.
Mm.
She had that built. She sent a few of us coaches a test room. We started using it.
Now,
That
are these on UPC Quiz?
they are a few of them are on
Okay.
UPC Quiz. It is not publicly available.
Yes.
Not publicly available
As of this
as of
podcast
now. Right.
on hold on, what's the date? This is what's the date? Today is April 20th.
Today's
So
April 20th.
so as of
Monday, April
today,
20th.
it
They're
is
not
not,
available.
but the plans are in the future, hopefully.
Very, very near future. Um, to make those publicly available. And
Now,
so
okay. Go ahead. Keep
that
going.
added back the features that we're accustomed to where the buzzer is now called. So instead of calling the name that shows on your screen for buzzing.live, we go back to the calling of red 1, the calling of yellow 2,
Mm-hmm.
a button you can
Automatically
press for interruption.
automatically starting the time.
Well, that we were still missing the timer at that point.
Okay. Okay.
She got it out to us as quickly as she could so we could start testing. Timer was coming as she was able to furiously code from
Mm-hmm.
I know she was getting up early at 5 o'clock in the morning
Oh
coding
my goodness.
before her teaching job, then staying up at night
Oh
and
my.
coding some more. So it was kind of crazy, I'm sure, what she was going
Well,
with. But
thanks so much to Sister Ruth Wilson for putting this together. I mean, she's obviously doing a fantastic job, and kudos to her for, she may possibly save our Bible quizzing season. So,
that's right.
thank
That's
you
right.
so much, Sister Ruth. If you ever listen.
Huge shout out to Sister Ruth for that. But we started making sure that we were getting back some of those things that we needed. And her intention from the very beginning was to eventually integrate this into BQ tournaments, which is the software program that we use to run tournaments to keep score in a regular quiz.
Mm-hmm.
So the progression was from this site that was foreign to us and not customized at all for quizzing into a quiz room that we could use as coaches, and then integrating that program where we could use the virtual buzzer system in a tournament. We ask her, can we get this by April 18th when we're running the senior tournament? I don't know. We back and forth all week. I text her, no pressure, but progress.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she tells me furiously coding, furiously coding. So it was fun that week. She got it out. She did an awesome job. We installed the new beta version of the program at Friday night at 6:30. So it was awesome. She met the deadline, and we were able to use that to run a tournament last Saturday.
Wow. Okay.
But that kind
So
of gives you the history of how it became about.
wow. Thank you for spearheading this and for pushing that forward, and for making. And thank you to Sister Wilson again. So
Like I said, she already had the idea.
right.
We were already thinking of doing it before we knew that she was working on it. And so with she and I communicating, we were just able to be the first district that had already committed to doing a virtual tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to help test that for her.
So it is good. So coaches, if you don't know, like we said before, buzzin.live, readily available, play around with it. I've used it in, when on a Zoom call with my kids to just do some quizzing with a buzzer. It's just good to try and get into that again if you can. But in the future, we're hoping we're going to be able to use UPC Quiz, the BQ tournament software, and to make this happen. So,
And I
let's
will
go.
say about BuzzIn.live, he does have a note up on that website now. Obviously, that programmer developer is not associated with quizzing, but I don't think he was prepared for the traffic
Mm.
that his website would get when all of us
Mhm.
found it. So I
Right.
think he has a note up there now that stability of that may be decreased by traffic. So
Gotcha. Now, have you had issues with internet connections and latency with buzzing in? Have the kids experienced this and told you?
well, It's definitely an issue because people have different reliability levels on their internet connection. For the most part, everybody's experiencing relatively the same, um, widespread internet. Most
Mm-hmm.
everybody has pretty much the same thing. If you're in a rural area and you know you have a bad signal, you're at a disadvantage. um, buzzer wise. And that's something that we just can't control. So we
Right.
tried to warn people up front, you need to have the strongest internet connection available to you. Use a computer with an Ethernet connection and not depend on Wi Fi if possible. Know whether you're faster on Wi-Fi or whether you're faster on 4G. And trust me, those kids know, because if they're watching videos on YouTube or whatever, they know whether it's better and more dependable on their Wi-Fi connection or on their data connection. They know.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Uh, so
Mm.
some of those internet things we couldn't control, and we knew we wouldn't be able to control, but we were surprised at how smoothly it went. We expected more issues than we had.
What was some of the feedback that you received after this tournament happened? So coaches, quizzers, quiz masters that were using this. What
Mhm.
was some of the feedback you heard?
I mean, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. We had a lot of people who weren't sure about participating, didn't know how it would go. Many of them expressed they were glad they did it. It felt uncomfortable. They didn't expect it to go well, but it was better than what they expected. Um, Most people were amazed at the technology, amazed that Sister Ruth figured out how to do this, that she figured out how to do it in such a short amount of time, that,
Mm-hmm.
we really only lost 4 or 5 weeks,
Right.
where we didn't have a tournament. But overall, I think the biggest takeaway is people were just thankful to see each other, be together, and feel some sense of normal in
Mm-hmm.
seeing quizzers, hearing quiz masters, seeing their friends, and answering questions.
That's awesome.
Um,
Goodness.
the experience division got a little bit of a rough start on Saturday, um, because of some technical difficulties with the buzzer system. Brother Cox joined us, our Louisiana District Superintendent joined us for devotion that morning, made some announcements about youth camp that made our quizzers really happy. And then we were having some technical difficulties, and he was able to entertain us with his saxophone while we solved some things. So
That's great.
improvise at its best. But the intermediate sessions, I have to say, give a huge shout out to Carson Elliott, Abigail Constant, Eric Forbes, and Camille Boken. Those 4 young adults, who, of course, all 4 former quizzers, ran 2 sessions of the intermediate division like clockwork on
Wow.
Saturday. They just jumped in and did it.
That's
And
awesome.
it was it went surprisingly smooth. I did find out much later, after it had happened, that they had one little glitch, and Carson's computer that was being used for the Zoom video session went completely dead in the middle of a quiz. And it was as simple as the fact that we were using a bad power strip,
Mm.
and he didn't know the computer wasn't charging,
Oh,
and he
wow.
went completely dead. They didn't even come get me. They just solved the problem, plugged it back in, started back up the Zoom call, said apologize. We had a bad power strip. We're back going, and kept it going.
That's awesome.
So I really don't feel like we had more technical difficulties than you would have at a normal tournament.
Right. I mean, we can't
Things
avoid
happen.
the we can't avoid the fact that we always have an issue here or there. I know our January tournament we had buzzer issues, and you just learn to get, fix them, get by them, and it'll probably be similar with this. But the biggest point is we have quizzing. We have the ability to
It's
meet
available.
together and to quiz, even if we're in our own homes.
Right.
Which is amazing that we have this opportunity, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. But
Right.
one thing that everybody wants to see, wants to hear is like, how does this work? What do we do? How do I get in here? So can you either show us or explain to us, like, step by step, how this works and how to get this set up?
So we used Zoom. Most people are familiar with Zoom. We actually started out with a different video conferencing application. We started using WebEx. We investigated several different video conferencing. We were looking for what was the most user friendly and what we could use for quizzing, because we really wanted the ability for breakout sessions. One of the first questions that we got are, how are timeouts going to happen? How are contests going to happen? And so we were looking for an application that could accommodate that. And it turned out that Zoom was the best application for that, as far as our what we needed for quizzing. So we spent several hours on different video conferencing and trying to figure out what would be best. But Zoom, of course, you can do a 40-minute quiz on Zoom with that 40-minute limitation. We went ahead and purchased a district license for Zoom so that we wouldn't have that time limitation and have people logging off, logging back on with that time limitation. So the virtual quiz rooms that Sister Ruth has, instead of going to buzzin.live, the website that you would go to for the quizzers to join is quiz.upcquiz.com/buzzer.php. And when the quizzers, I can show you what that looks like right quick if you can see my screen.
Yeah, let's try that. That'd be wonderful. So you say quiz.upcquiz.com/buzzer.php?
Right. I'm going to go ahead and add all of these photos in. So give me just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
So that's the website that you would go to when the quizzer is ready to log in for a quiz. They're going to go to this website. And when they go to that website, here's what they're going to see. That little red button at the top is your buzzer. You have the ability to refresh connection. You enter your name, and it's helpful to put team name / your name. So my quizzers would put Alexandria/Cade. Alexandria.
So I was curious if you would put like red 1, red 2.
You could, but it's better not to, because once you're logged into that quiz room, you can be assigned a red 1 or yellow 1.
Okay.
So for instance, if you're on the red, but the next quiz you move to the yellow, then you don't have to log off and log back on if you're quizzing 2 quizzes in a row.
So it's just the same as putting in a quizzer's name in a slot in BQ tournament like we always do.
Right. Okay. They just get to type in their name, and it's helpful if that team name is there in case you have more than one Camille.
Right.
So then they're given the quiz number and the room key, which is a passcode to get them into that quiz room.
And they're
you're going to get that from your district coordinator, or if you're doing this as a coach, it's going to be your virtual quiz room that's attached to your coach account.
Okay.
So in a tournament, we have quiz room. We have enough virtual quiz rooms for as many sessions as we're running.
So if there's 2 intermediate, 2 experienced sessions, you have 4 quiz room numbers.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And so the quizzers are given that either by the quizmaster, or another thing that we did to help communicate with people on Saturday is we had a huge group me text with all the coaches in it. And then they were allowed to either transfer all that information to their quizzers or add their quizzers to that group me so that the quizzers could get it directly. Either way works.
Just so everyone knows, GroupMe is an application on your iPhone or Android. It's just a group messaging system. You can create a group and add as many people as you'd like and text them all at the same time.
Right. And so that was our communication for the weekend. If an intermediate quizmaster needed to say, next, I'm calling Alexandria and Denham Springs, be ready. You're going to be in quiz room, whatever.
Okay.
That was our way of getting out. It was the same way as you would use an announcement in a quiz tournament.
Gotcha.
The same way a quizmaster would say, I'm calling these teams.
And also, was there a way for them to keep, one thing you could do at a tournament is you can walk in a room and see who's quizzing and look at the matrix and see when you're, if you're next. So how is that replicated?
The way we handled that was all sessions were live on upcquiz.com.
Okay. So that was everyone's matrix?
That was everyone's matrix. You're following that matrix. You know whether you're next.
Okay. And then.
So you would check upcquiz.com just like you would stick your head in the session and find out who's quizzing.
So could a team join a room before they were supposed to quiz, or were they not allowed to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Everybody stayed on the video call the entire time.
Oh, wow.
So the
Okay.
video call started at 8:30 on Saturday morning and didn't end until we were done with awards.
Wow.
And so most people joined for the day, and then they would turn their video off and mute when they weren't quizzing,
Okay.
and they could still watch the teams that were quizzing. So that was another way that you could know how close you were getting to quiz. You were watching everybody else just like you would be in general session and sitting in the back of the room watching those teams quiz.
And you can set it up to where if someone's video is turned off, they don't have a box taking up the screen, right? So if everyone turns their
Right,
video
right.
off,
Because on Zoom, you can sort your videos by who's, to only show whose video is available.
right.
So
And
that limits distractions because you're only seeing the people who are quizzing.
right, that makes a lot of sense. That I can really see that. I can really see the benefit to that. Okay,
Right.
so
So this is what the room looks like
and
when you go to join.
just for anyone that is obviously I put this on podcast, which is no video, just audio only, and then we have YouTube side. So this may be better to view on YouTube, but for those that aren't watching, it's just a web page with a big red buzzer on it with a couple fields to
Right.
fill in your name, and that buzzer, I'm guessing you just all you have to do is
Tap.
tap the buzzer just on your
Tap with
phone.
your
Like
finger.
all these kids have played plenty of iPhone, Android games where you have to tap. I'm sure they've got
Right.
quick enough thumbs to make this work.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
so
And one thing that we did discover for those who use iPhone, and Android may have this technology too. I'm more of an iPhone user, but the 3D or haptic touch on an iPhone, it's best to turn that off because
okay,
if you press and hold the buzzer, then it can, try to take you to the web page where that image is defined. And so most people had to turn off that 3D touch
that's
or be very
okay,
careful that they tap the buzzer and not press and hold.
right. Okay,
So
that's a
a
great
little bit
tip.
of a sensitivity issue there that we discovered on Saturday. So
Okay,
then also there's the ability for the quizmaster to use their personal phone as an interruption button.
interesting. Okay,
hmm
so
So
what is this we're looking at now?
this is the interrupt. You can see that I'm connected in one of the Louisiana District quiz rooms,
Okay,
and one person in the room, and that's the interruption button.
okay, and so
So
do you have to
this is
log
what
in differently as the quiz master?
mhm, mhm.
Okay, so how do you do that versus a
You
quiz?
would do that through the coordinator accounts.
Okay, so you have to have a coordinator account on UPC
Right.
Quiz and
Right.
log in
Because
with that.
obviously we can't have quizzers logging in as the interruption button. That wouldn't work
Exactly.
very well.
So if I have a coordinator account or a coach account, I'm guessing it will be if it's not currently.
Uh-huh.
If I have a coach account and I log in, I will only see the interruption button.
You will see both. You will see
Both.
you will see both. Either the option to log into your room regularly or to log in as the interruption button. You'll see both.
Gotcha. Okay, and then if a quizzer does a quizzer have to have an account on UPC Quiz to log in?
Nope.
Okay.
Not at all. They only have to have an internet capable device, which that's one thing we really haven't talked about is for them to do this, they obviously need one device for video
Mhm.
feed and ideally a second internet capable device to use as a buzzer.
Okay. So
We did have a couple people try to do it on a laptop, split their screen. It works. It's definitely possible for you to have video on one side and your buzzer on the other if
mhm.
you're working on a big enough screen on a laptop. But switching between applications is not ideal for speed. So the best thing is for you to have one device for video and a handheld internet capable device like a phone or a tablet to use as your buzzer system.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, what in okay, we'll get more into it. We'll get more into
Right.
like
That's the
just about
interruption
something.
button. I
Okay.
just wanted to show you this is what it looks like for you to assign people to a room.
Okay. So this is a
Okay,
separate
so
page. That button's still at the
right.
top. So is that what is that button? It's just
That's That's the button in my quiz room. It's just a demonstration
Okay,
button on this
gotcha.
page. But you can see that it says 2 people in the room, and I'm logged in as Quizmaster when I took the screenshot, and you can
Hmm.
see that Cade was logged in, and then
Okay,
I assigned him to red 1
gotcha.
with
And
a little
so
drop-down menu.
in this case, okay, so if everybody, you have 50 quizzers that are logged in for a tournament,
Mhm.
then you would have Alexandria Cade, and then
Right.
Bloomington Sherwin, and then
Mhm.
you'd have everybody else in that drop down. You see 50 kids' names, and you would just pick the teams on the red,
Right.
pick the team
So
on the yellow.
obviously it's easier if the kids are done quizzing for the day and they know they're done, they can go ahead and close that web page and log out of the buzzer system, and that makes it easier on the scorekeeper.
Okay,
It's not absolutely necessary, but
right.
we did ask people, if you're done for the day, go ahead and log out. If you're a couple of quizzes from quizzing, go ahead and log in.
Not
And
not
if you're not assigned to a buzzer, it's not going to go off.
right. That's true. So they wouldn't have to log out of the Zoom call, the video call,
No.
obviously. They can continue
Right.
participating in the tournament that way, but it could be just more efficient if they log out of the UPC quiz. That makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
Okay.
So this is the virtual quiz room. This is what it looks like when you buzz in. This is
Oh,
what Cade's phone looks like when he would hit the buzzer. You can see that it lights up with his buzzer number and his name.
okay. Now this is what
So
Cade would see?
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. This was actually what any quizzer besides Cade would see on their
Okay.
phone. They can tell who buzzed in. Of course, it's called auditory on the scorekeeper's computer,
Yes.
but they also have a visual to know whether or not they buzzed in
And who hit? And
and who
okay.
hit. So you notice that the screen is red. That means somebody from the red team hit, and it was
Okay.
red 1, Cade.
Okay.
And then somebody from the yellow team hit. This was yellow 1, Camille,
Okay.
and that she hit. So this is the kind of thing they're going to see on their screen.
So
Um,
this is from a quizzer view, because on the
from a
previous one.
quizzer view,
Okay.
yes.
Now what is
So,
the
for
green?
example, you see the green screen. That's what Cade sees on his screen when he buzzed in.
Oh,
So you
okay.
know it's you when you
If it's
see your buzzer, your name, and a green screen.
okay, let's go back. Let's walk through that again. So, let's go back to the okay. So this looks like you're logged in as you because it looks like you have the ability to assign
Yeah,
buzzers. So quizzers
yes,
won't see those drop down
that's
menus,
correct.
correct?
That's
But
correct.
that is
Let me move
but
that.
if you don't hit someone from the red hits, you see a red screen. If you
That's
don't
right.
hit and someone from the yellow team hits, you see a yellow screen.
That's right.
And then if
But then
you
if you
hit,
hit,
it's a green screen.
that's right.
Brilliant. Wonderful.
Brilliant.
That makes
Brilliant.
a lot of sense. By the way, this is the first time I've been seeing this, so I'm learning along with everyone else that hasn't seen it.
Right.
Okay.
So then once it's integrated into BQ tournaments, then this is what a scorekeeper is going to look at. And so
Okay.
this is me going back to one of our score sheets from Saturday, which is why you can't tell who's logged in at what buzzer at this point.
Okay.
But this looks very much like a normal score sheet.
Uh-huh.
You'll notice, I don't know if I can pinch on this, but you see that little red dot
Uh-huh.
right beside where you normally initialize the buzzer.
Yes.
That red dot is what brings up the virtual quiz room. And so
Interesting.
when you do that, it brings up this screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be logged into your virtual quiz room
Which
with your
is
existing key.
your number was 1200.
Mhm.
That was the
Right,
quiz room number. Okay.
right. And so logged in but not connected to a quiz room yet. That's where you're going to see your quizzers' names that they've put in that need to be assigned.
Okay.
Okay. And then down below, you see the 6 quizzers that I'm expecting on this quiz because that matches my
Oh.
score sheet. And so then as they log in, then I'm choosing and assigning
Then
Cade to
you
where
met
Cade should be, Bryn to where Bryn should be.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. And this menu opens up when you hit that red button.
That's right.
And then if you had 50 quizzers logged into the quiz.upcquiz.com/buzzer.php, their names would all show up there in
That's right.
that menu right up there. Okay, that makes sense to me. So, okay, will you go up one more time? I have a question.
Yeah.
The create new key versus use existing key. What does that mean
Um,
exactly?
just use the existing key.
Okay,
That's
so you use the key that was given to you for the quiz room?
by Sister Ruth. Yes, your
Okay.
quiz and that key. So that creating a new key you would do if something went wrong. You would need to
Okay.
change your key.
Okay. But for the
Mhm.
most part, you will be giving a key to a quiz room.
Right.
You will
And
leave it
then
there.
that room is associated with your UPC account email. So that's why I'm showing that login screen there at the bottom. You'll need to be logged in with your UPC quiz account in order to use a virtual quiz room.
Okay. And then you also have a password for your. Okay. Yep. Stay
Sure.
low. Okay. So you can kind of have it set up on a computer already, and it'll just kind of save it, and you'll have your quiz room logged into your BQ tournament software, and that's
Right.
just the quiz room for that computer, basically.
Right.
So if
And so
so that makes a lot of sense. Where if district coordinators kind of know this is the laptop that we use for experience session A, and this is the laptop we use for intermediate B, it already basically has a quiz room.
right, you can stay signed in to that quiz room. But if you need to change sessions, that ability is there. And of
That makes
course,
a lot of sense.
for running a tournament, that's going to work on a coordinator account.
Right. Okay.
But then if you're doing a practice quiz, you're going to do it the same way, that virtual quiz room. You're just going to be logged into your coach quiz room.
And you will have you will be given your virtual quiz room.
Exactly.
So we're hoping that eventually we will, as Sister Wilson, who once again we thank for all this,
Absolutely.
that gets more quiz rooms together, that maybe churches could be assigned these in some way and divvy them
Right.
out. I mean, I'm just kind of
I
interested to see.
verified this with her today. She said that her plan is to associate those with UPC quiz accounts, which are free at this time.
Okay.
It's the same account if your district uses online registration for tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same account that you would use to register for a tournament. So now when you log into your UPC quiz coach account, it tells you manage such and such number of teams, and you can click which teams you want to register for a tournament. Now at the top of that, instead of displaying your team information, it will display your virtual quiz room and how to enter it once she releases that. Now we're doing this again next weekend. We're
Mm-hmm.
tackling doing a virtual tournament with our juniors and beginners. Pray for us. It's going to be fun.
That
Um,
is going to be interesting for sure.
very interesting. We did a practice yesterday with our beginners, and I think we had a couple of them doing the thing that kids like to do in the mirror. We had little tongue exercise going, and all kinds of wonderful things that beginners do when they see themselves on video. So
Oh my
it
goodness.
it should prove very interesting. But we are tackling this weekend with our juniors and beginners, and I think that's going to be the last trial run before she releases the program and the virtual quiz rooms.
Okay. That makes sense. So coaches should probably go out and go ahead, and if you're not familiar with UPC quiz, get familiar
Now
with
would
it.
be a great time to create a free account.
Create an account, register put in your team information, however many teams you have. Yeah, I encourage you guys to go do that, because that would get ahead of the game. Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
It is
So
really
another thing that we did leading up to the tournament is we did a 7 p.m. Friday evening orientation, even though we were not doing any quizzing, especially with the newness of this. Of course, Sister Christy and I had already contacted every team in the district and given them an opportunity to participate in a video conference call and the use of BuzzIn.live, just to make sure
Mhm.
everybody knew what was available to them. But the Friday night orientation was a district-wide Zoom call for coaches, quizzers, anybody to log in, test their equipment, test their connection, make sure they're able to log into Zoom. We discovered pretty quickly that if you send out a link to Zoom, It automatically joins you with your profile name, where we had asked people to join with their team name and the quizzer name, or at least, Alexandria slash coach, Bloomington slash scorekeeper, so that we knew who everyone was. And if you join with the link, it's going to go by default to whatever your Zoom profile name is. And that wasn't always helpful to us
Right.
for knowing who people were. So in the future, we'll be sending out meeting ID and password instead of the link so that people have to name themselves as
Interesting.
we requested when they join. But that Friday night orientation, everybody got on the Zoom call. We answered questions, explained what we would be doing. We allowed every single quizzer on that Zoom call that night to log on to the buzzer and test their buzzer. Some kids connected immediately, no issues. Others, we had to do some troubleshooting, either maybe turning off that 3D touch on an iPhone, especially if they were running a new, iPhone XR, iPhone 11, anything with that Touch ID. We had to turn that off. Some people just realized maybe they had screen damage or that
Mm.
part of the screen was not sensitive. Go get a different device, use mom's phone, dad's phone, the tablet. Um,
Even a laptop, right?
yeah, even the laptop. The idea of Friday evening was to get people really comfortable with the technology. Everybody knew how to start their video. Everybody knew how to stop their video. Everybody knew how to mute, unmute, because, you know, unmuting yourself is kind of like picking up the microphone in quizzing.
Right.
And it's just, a new skill that people had to get used to, where they're used to picking up the microphone. They had to reach forward, touch that screen, unmute themselves to make sure that they were heard for their answer.
It's so interesting because there's so many things where, like, you used to pick up the mic, now you unmute yourself. You used to stick your head in the quiz room, now you just,
Go check a website.
or you get on the Zoom call and, like,
Right.
open up and see where they're at. It's just so interesting that we're doing the same things. We're just doing it in a
Having to
vastly
relearn how to do them.
right, in a different way using technology. It's really fascinating. Um,
Right.
oh my goodness. Okay. So I think we got through. I have some stuff written down, so I want to make sure we got through. Okay, here's a big one.
Okay.
How do timeouts and contests work?
Okay. One of the reasons that we chose Zoom is because the breakout rooms were the most user-friendly and easy for the quizmaster to operate. So again, one of the reasons we ask people to join the Zoom call using their team name and the quizzer name is because when they joined, we started assigning them to breakout rooms.
Okay.
And so those breakout rooms allow the quizmaster to send people to separate Zoom calls with only the people that are assigned to that breakout room.
Okay.
So
And that's pretty quick. They're able to do that pretty quickly.
under 10 seconds.
Wow. Okay. So if I call a
Probably
timeout,
under 5 seconds.
if I call a timeout within
You
five,
call
ten
a timeout,
seconds.
give me just a moment for a break, and I'll set up your breakout room and make sure everybody's in it. So, I go through and make sure we have Bloomington coach, Bloomington scorekeeper, we have Bloomington Sherwin, we have Bloomington Avery, and send them to the breakout room.
And
And
then,
so we have about that 5-second transition. Everybody else remains in the main session of the Zoom call, and you get 60 seconds with your quizzers.
okay.
And so, you'll see a pop-up on your screen that says the host is sending you to a breakout, accept or decline. You
Okay.
join that breakout room, you go to your breakout room, you start talking to your quizzers, and then you're going to see a little pop-up on your screen that says breakouts will end in 60 seconds. 60, 59,
Oh, then
58.
it counts it down for you. So you
That's
see the
right. It
clock.
counts it
Okay.
down for you. Or there's an option to leave now. You're
Oh,
done
okay.
with your timeout. You've said all you need to say. Quiz is locked. That only took 5 seconds. Everybody clicks to leave, and you're back in main session.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And would contests work
Contests
similarly?
work very similarly. Now, we did not get really technical with contests this past Saturday. It's possible, but we tried to leave the whole team in the breakout room and just use the honor system for who was supposed to be talking to the coach. It is possible, if you're willing, to edit your breakout rooms within a quiz. If you have a quiz master who's techie and can do that pretty fast. It's not difficult, but you can send just one quizzer, you know, or you can send two quizzers to a breakout and not the coach, and then add the coach. But it gets a little awkward. So generally, we would just send the team for a contest, and then when you're ready to, if you're withdrawing the contest, then you can leave the breakout room, and the coach or the captain says contest withdrawn.
Okay.
If you are planning to present the contest, and there's a little button within your breakout room that says ask for help. And
Okay.
so if you ask for help, then the quizmaster joins your breakout session.
I have a really important question that a lot of people
Okay.
are going to have. Do we
Okay.
still have to stand up to say contest?
Well, I mean, I guess that's going to be up to each district coordinator and how they choose to organize their tournament. We did, some rules naturally went away,
Right.
and you know, standing
Han-
up and stating contest became unmute yourself.
right. Hands on the table. Don't look at the other team with, meanly. Gosh,
Yeah,
there's a
at
lot.
some point we realized that, quizzers had their heads in their hands because they knew that their teammates were messing up. And, normally your quizzers are facing forward and they're not seeing their teammates. But when you're on a
Mhm.
Zoom call, you're kind of facing your teammates. And so, we had to caution people to watch your expressions, stop your video if you have to, so
Right.
that people are not seeing, everything on your face, which I'm the classic. I'm the worst. I show everything on my face. So
Now, do you think it's better, like, for siblings? Do you think it'd be better for one Zoom call, one device for the Zoom call with both of them on there answering and using separate devices to buzz in? Or do you think preferentially it's better if everyone has their own video device and their own buzzer device?
I can tell you we did it both ways on Saturday.
Okay.
We had teams where the entire team was in, 6 locations. You would have 3 or even 4 quizzers all in a separate location. You had a scorekeeper in one, you had a coach in another, and it works perfectly fine. There's no need for anyone to be together. We can completely practice social distancing. Um, and the tournament still works. The reason that you might want to share video feed if you have siblings quizzing in the same house, or you have a coach and a quizzer in the same house, is to limit your use of bandwidth and Wi-Fi,
Right.
um, or because you have a limitation on the number of devices available to your
Hmm.
family. And so we allowed that, um, and I really didn't see any issues with that. We had to loosen a little bit, like for example, if a coach was with a quizzer, but that quizzer wasn't the team captain, the coach needed to be the one who called the timeout. If they leaned up in front of that quizzer and unmuted and called the timeout, that was a legal timeout call. We didn't get very legalistic with things like that. But
Gotcha.
it works either way, whether you have every single person in a different location, or if you have people in the same household, they can share that video feed. Obviously, quizzers cannot share a buzzer.
Would you, so it's just going through it, is your personal preference my team all together in a room with one call and everybody on their buzzer devices, or would your preference be everybody at home with
I think
your
my
team?
preference would be for the quizzers to be separate, because there's just too much chance to accidentally confer. If you're sitting there with 2 quizzers in a room and nobody else in the room, there's just nothing to keep that quizzer from giving their teammate an answer
Interesting.
before. Yeah, there's some things you just can't help.
See, as a coach, I would want to physically be with my kids just
Oh, I
because
would love
that's
that. I mean,
right.
if we had the chance, we'd all be back at physical tournaments.
Right.
I would want my team together. And one thing that we didn't request on Saturday, but if we ever do this again, it's going to be a huge request of mine, is we didn't request to go to breakout rooms before each quiz started. I would
Oh,
call my quizzers before we quizzed and pray with them together over the phone. But I think it would be a great addition to a virtual tournament to send each team to their breakout sessions for 1, 2, 3 minutes, whatever, so they can actually talk before that quiz in a breakout room, like most teams would do
Right.
in a little
That'd be
huddle before a
nice.
tournament.
Maybe like
It's
a
something
two.
I didn't think to request, and
Right.
it's something that looking back, we really missed.
Like a 2 minute breakout. If you're done earlier, come back in and
Right,
we'll be ready to go. But at least you're allotted 2 3 minutes. That I like that idea a lot because
right,
I
right,
that's our time to shine as coaches. We gotta.
right.
That's where we give that movie speech, that
Or at
pregame.
or at least jerk somebody by their tie.
Oh man, yeah, my kids would probably have a lot to say about my pregame speeches. I just say the same thing over and over again. Um, all right. Let me see. So, do you think it would be another preferential thing? So like right here, you have a headset on with a good mic on it. I can hear you loud and clear. I've got this microphone that is not unreasonably priced at all, and there are some very reasonably priced devices that help clearly, you to be clearly heard.
Mhm.
If this is going to be a longer term thing, and possibly, possibly used for more tournaments in districts, do you think it's a good idea for quizzers, coaches to try to invest or maybe use church equipment, or if possible in some way come up with a microphone, headphones to use during these virtual tournaments?
Sure, I mean, they're helpful, but the main advantage of using headphones, microphone, things like that is to limit the distractions around you. So, if you're in a household where, there's a baby crying or whatever, and you can put on the headphones and limit how much of that comes through to the quiz, then that's an advantage. But we had some people that used headphones, microphones. We had others that didn't. I only remember right now one quizzer that we repeatedly had to ask, and you need to lean into your microphone. Um, and that quizzer was probably somebody we typically have to say that to in a physical tournament as well.
Hmm.
So the people that are naturally more soft spoken are going to want to invest in something to make sure that they're heard. But if they've tested equipment, it's really not. It's not a necessary item. It's not something that people have to invest in
Okay.
because we could hear people on that Zoom call.
And quoting typically wasn't an issue or anything like that?
No, it really wasn't. There were some rare occasions where you might have a video glitch and you could clearly tell it was a video glitch. You have a circle on somebody's video, they're not loading, so you know that there was a gap in their quoting because their video went bad. That was a void and replace for us.
Okay.
If there was something technical like that. Now, obviously, if it's repeated and you're having to continually void and replace questions because somebody can't maintain connection, then they don't have the equipment to participate in this manner. And that's unfortunate, but that's why we tried to test our equipment and test our connection. Things happen, if somebody's device died in the middle of a quiz, that to us was like, the emergency rule where they needed to go to the bathroom or whatever, and they can rejoin the quiz when they're able to get their device back running. We didn't particularly cater to those technical difficulties. If they happened in the first quiz, we were especially lenient each time the first a team quiz for the first time.
Gotcha.
We may remind that quizzer, you need to unmute your microphone. I'm not hearing you.
Hmm.
Um, say your answer again. I couldn't hear
Hmm.
you. You were muted. Um, but then after that first quiz, it became the quizzer's responsibility to you forget, you forget. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You
if you,
know, it,
yeah,
it's a
you
quizzer's responsibility to be clear, and that included unmuting your microphone.
right, just
So,
like they're responsible to pick up their microphone at a physical
right,
tournament, right?
exactly. So, we didn't allow for um, point of orders about connection and things like that. We were lenient where we could. We tried not to make siblings in the same house quiz at the same time who might have been sharing equipment, especially if it was somebody across divisions and they
Hmm.
were having to switch back and forth between Zoom calls because of number of devices limitations. We tried to be as lenient on that as we could because nobody was planning for this. We didn't
Right.
plan to run tournaments this way, so we were as lenient as we could, and we really didn't have any issues with that, where we had to wait on people. But at some point, it just became, if they're not there, they're not there. We can't
Right.
we can't wait on them.
Oh, goodness. Okay, let me see. What else do I have for you? See if I can stump you on anything. Do you think other districts are going to be able to jump into this pretty soon and possibly have May tournaments this way?
I think it is definitely possible. The technology is there, it's widely available, and the virtual quiz rooms are about to be as widely available as well. So it's just a matter of those districts getting permission from their coordinators, um, to make it happen, getting coaches on board. Honestly, I recommend doing what we do. Don't try to have a tournament when people have never been on a Zoom call
Right.
before. Have orientations, have somebody take charge of contacting your teams, making sure they're set up, they understand the technology, they've tested their equipment, they know how it works, their quizzers have enough devices and equipment to connect. You'll have a disaster if you try to have everybody log on at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning and nobody's tested anything. You can waste, a lot of time. But it's going to be widely available, and it's just going to be up to who wants to do it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Um, I'm interested to see if there's a promotion of this. I mean, because obviously coordinators need to hear about this and coaches need to hear about this. So, um, we got to get the word out there. Like
Right.
dip your toes into this. Start figuring this stuff out because this. I mean, I would just be unbelievably distraught if something happened to state finals and God forbid nationals. But if this is if this is what we got, then it's much better than nothing. Just so much
Right.
better than nothing.
Right.
So I mean, it is possible that this could save our Bible quizzing season, and I hope that it doesn't come to
In
that.
some form, at least.
Right, at least part of it. So let's get the word out there and let's try and promote this stuff. Um, so for districts to make this happen, coordinators need to learn the system. Coordinators need to do this. It's going to be required that somebody on a district level owns a Zoom license, right, or Zoom premium account.
Or, I mean, there are plenty of other video conferencing apps that can be used. We elected to go with Zoom and pay the license because the breakouts worked so much smoother for us. WebEx is free right now under coronavirus. So those are free right now, and they have breakout sessions. To me, they didn't work as smoothly, but they have them. So if
Gotcha.
people are trying to, work on a budget, there are other video conferencing apps that they can use. Also, K through 12 teachers have free Zoom account license right now with unlimited time as well. So if you have teachers in your district that might want to participate, there there are budgets
Yep.
that can be helped out in those ways.
Okay. So do like we said, well, okay, so sorry, I had to continue my thought. I was getting ahead of myself. So for a district to do this, all you really probably need to pay for if you want to use Zoom like you guys did is that Zoom premium account. Other than that, coordinators, quiz masters may need a scorekeeper. But other than that, it's just up to the individuals to have a device to be on Zoom and a device to buzz in and
And
everything
practice.
in practice and come together and figure this stuff out. So do you think that, you know, like we said, heaven forbid we can't come together for nationals because I would literally bawl my eyes out most likely.
It's
Um,
going to be horrendous in my household if there's no nationals. I can't even begin to describe.
and like I just want to say that I am so glad that I have no decision making power in the least in this.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna pray for our leaders to make the best decision they can and whatever it is. I am going to choose to support them. I may not be happy about it and I may cry, but I will support whatever decision that they make. But
Absolutely.
if it comes down to that, do you think that this is a real possibility for nationals?
Well, you've already touched this, and I don't want to be overly repetitive, but I cannot answer that question without getting on my soapbox about leadership. I was raised in a pastor's home, raised to respect leadership. Leaders are leaders for a reason, at a time, for that time period. I've seen firsthand the pain when leaders have to struggle against those spirits, and at POA, Pastor Mangan regularly consults with those that he has placed himself under, people that have given authority over him. So I feel like it's a leadership question that I don't really want to speculate whether it's a solution for state finals. Obviously, we all want to be together. I don't know anyone that would choose a virtual tournament over a physical tournament,
Yeah.
even if the virtual tournaments were considered a huge success. Even the quizzers that won and had great quizzing success and enjoyed themselves, none of those quizzers are choosing a virtual tournament over a physical tournament. It's not
Right.
happening. We want to be together, and I want to be very clear that when we put this together and coordinated this virtual tournament, there was no intention that this was the future of quizzing, that we were trying to reinvent quizzing, that we were trying to make it better, that we were trying to push it in a direction. That was never the intention, and it was never the thought process. It
Right.
was only, um, let's take the situation that we've all been put in that's out of our control, and let's make the best of it that we can,
Hmm.
not knowing how long it's going to be. Let's not waste the time that we have, and let's do with it what we can. So that being said, um, is it potentially a solution? The technology is there.
Hmm.
It could be done if it comes to that, and that is our only option, and leadership chose to use this avenue instead of canceling. The technology is there.
Hmm.
I don't even know if this point whether I would, if the decision was mine, which it's obviously not, and I'm very thankful that it's not.
Me
I
too.
don't even know if I had input with that decision whether I would push for it to be a solution or not to be a solution. And my reason for that is it's different.
Hmm.
This quizzing in this atmosphere is different. We didn't talk a lot about the timing delays. The delays that you deal with in a virtual tournament are not due to the buzzer. The buzzer acts seamlessly, aside from small internet connectivity, which I know when we're dealing in fractions of second, internet connectivity makes a difference. But that's not the major difference we're dealing with. The major timing difference we're dealing with in a virtual tournament is due to the video delay. And that's that 1 to 2 seconds. And everybody's dealing with the same delay, but it makes it more difficult to interrupt questions, especially on the junior level. You'll notice it because 10-point questions become difficult to interrupt because of that 1 to 2 second delay. It's difficult to anticipate that keyword that you're getting. With seniors, you don't notice it as much because senior questions are less timing based.
Hmm.
But there are certain question types. A quotation completion is very timing based. A quote question can be very timing based. You don't know whether you're getting that keyword and where the question's going from the very beginning, or whether you're having to anticipate the word or the phrase at the end. Um, and so that being said, it's just a different game. This is not what we signed up for, and virtual
Right.
quizzing is never going to replace physical quizzing. We're making the best of what we have, and but but the avenue is there. I don't think if we had state finals or we had nationals, I'd go so far as to say I'm not even sure the competitive results would be the same in a
Hmm.
virtual format that they would be in a physical format. I don't know. I don't know. Is it better than nothing? For us right now on a state level, it is absolutely better than nothing.
Yeah.
Is it available as a possible solution for state finals technology wise? Absolutely. Is that the best thing? That's a leadership decision.
Right. I'm interested that I don't see a way we have nationals normal, like a completely normal nationals like we have every year. I really hope we have it. I really hope we're able to come together. But just me personally, and I don't know anything, and I haven't talked to anybody, but I'd be shocked if we have mass gatherings for things like
Yeah.
orientation and devotions. It would be very hard.
I
I
feel like if we're able to have it, it's going to look different.
I
I
agree.
don't
Yeah.
know what Illinois looks like right now, but I'm in Louisiana, and everybody knows Louisiana is kind of a hot spot. I think there were even some comments about, if we wanted to if we were going to have nationals in person, maybe we didn't want people from these hotspot states coming. I'm in one of those hotspot states.
Mm-hmm.
Our rates are finally leveling out a little bit this week. We're seeing a little bit of results from social distancing, but we're being warned by the Louisiana governor that when public gatherings are allowed again, they're going to look different. There
Mm-hmm.
will be personal protective equipment required. We can expect temperature checks entering public buildings. We can expect, with restaurants, fewer people allowed in, a lot more distance between tables, gloves and masks on wait staff. Things are going to look different when we're allowed to be back together. How soon that is, and with a national tournament, we're looking at people traveling across state lines who are coming from different state regulations. And I've said from the beginning, when people ask me, is nationals going to happen this year, I'm concerned that it may not even be a leadership decision. At some point,
Right.
it might be whether or not it's legally possible for us to hold a gathering.
Right. Oh, we're gonna continue to pray. We're gonna continue to pray that it all works out. And like I said, please everyone pray for our leaders. And it
Absolutely.
may be out of their hands, and it may not. And whatever it is, we have to trust them as our leaders, and for them to make the best decision. And I think they will. And like I said this on Facebook, but if anything came out of the extravaganza qualification decisions, which were complex, but they were complex because they were thoughtful and they were doing the best they
Exactly.
could to be the best solution for everyone as much as possible. Um, and so they care and
Right.
they
And
work
it was a
hard.
strong indication that if it's possible, everybody wants this to happen,
Right,
including leadership.
right.
Everybody wants quizzing to go back to what it was.
I agree. And I can't wait until it does. I am very
Right.
excited for it too. So I know you have a last year quizzer
I
that is an
do.
outstanding last year quizzer.
Thank
That's your
you. I
son,
do.
and so and obviously Brother Faubert has one, and
Exactly.
there's many outstanding
The
last year quizzers.
situation is not foreign to him. He knows.
Right. So they're going to make the best decision they can, and we're
Right.
going to do our best to make the best of what we have. Which thank you for being a part of that. This is really really cool. Thank you for showing us the pictures, and thank you for talking us through it. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to share it with other people and to promote it. I'd totally be down to if you or Sister Wilson or whoever wants to make some demonstration and educational and guide videos to like how to do this, how to get it set up to be more accessible for people to learn. I'd love to help do that in any way I can.
Absolutely.
If that's not being worked on already, because we I think if we work together, we can get this out there and really do something.
Absolutely. That's
So,
definitely the goal. And we need
well,
to set up a scrimmage between our teams too.
oh, that's another thing. So um, I was gonna say that in the long term, if nothing else comes of this from like a tournament perspective, um, we have the ability to practice with anybody, anywhere in the
Right.
country, anytime,
Right.
and so
Absolutely.
our teams
And
could
even
scrimmage every week if we wanted to.
right. That even beyond that, we have the ability for coaches to help other coaches practice their teams. You can have a coach virtually watch your practice
Mm-hmm.
and give you coaching hints.
Mm-hmm.
The the possibilities are limitless, and we weren't thinking in this vein. We weren't thinking of having people join our practices virtually. We weren't thinking about coaches meeting virtually that wouldn't be able to physically. We get that at nationals. You sit around in the lobby and talk with other coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and this has brought to light that we have the technology. We've had it for a while now to encourage one another on this level. And it took a crisis for us to realize how we could be using it. And I was talking to Brother Master stay on the phone, and we were talking about the possibility of maybe even hosting Bayou Blast virtually. So let us get through this junior tournament that we have this weekend, and then we will be talking about what's possible. And I know that could come right after a possible announcement about nationals. So I know we're expecting something the first week of May. So Bayou Blast would be pretty soon after that. We would even delay it a week. But in that conversation with Brother Masters about the possibility of Bayou Blast and operating that virtually and what would we have to do for that to happen, he reminded me that at our kickoff this year, Sister Kim Masters and even his daughter Sabri talked about pressure and how when we are in high pressure situations, good or the bad is going to come out
Mm-hmm.
when we're under pressure like that. And I think what we're seeing from this is, the quiz ministry, along with every other ministry in our churches, we're seeing good things come out of pressure situations. We're seeing people rise to the top and look for ways to keep this happening. And we're not seeing it only in quizzing. We're seeing young people create Sunday school content. We're seeing young people being used in ways they would not normally be used because they're familiar with the technology. So all of a sudden, they're the ones, creating these Zoom calls. They're the ones putting out social media content because that's our primary contact with people now. But we're seeing people rise to the challenge under pressure. And that was prophesied to us in our kickoff meeting back in October, when there's no way we could have predicted this kind of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But and I've heard people say it's not a coincidence that we studied Psalms this year.
Mm-hmm.
that
100%.
that doesn't escape us. David was under pressure, and we've studied him this year and how he reacted to those pressures, and the prayers that he prayed in those situations. And I love that Brother Faubert gave us the context, or at least a suggested context, for each one of these psalms. And that has been interesting as we work through the psalms to put ourselves in those situations and then see how David responded. And then correspondingly, here toward the end of the quiz year, we are put in situations that we couldn't predict, and how we are responding in those situations is fun to watch.
I lost my job last May, and quizzing really became a anchor for me, and a verse that I clung to, which I think a lot of us do in those times, is a verse from our study this year, which is, I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. And that passage is something that I clung to in that time. And
Hmm.
I can't, I'm so thankful and blessed to have a job now, which was just a miracle and a God thing that I was given this job. I started as soon as I got home from nationals last year. It really was just a God thing, 100%. It's amazing how God can take those terrible situations that you feel that there's no way out, and then you look back on it and you're like, man, I'm kind of glad that happened. you know Actually, I'm really glad that happened, so I'm so much better off than I was before, and I had no idea that I would have to go through that
Working all
trial.
things for our good when we don't even know it.
That's right, but that passage is definitely something that I hope we all, anyone that is really struggling this time, can hold on to. And I can relate in some form or fashion from my experience last summer as a father, and as a, as someone that never expected to lose their job, to be unemployed for a summer. I had the opportunity to truly just dive headfirst in quizzing, and that was all I really
Right.
focused on, to trying to get through it. I was job hunting and coaching quizzing, and it's something that I clung on to, and I hope that anyone out there that is really struggling, which there are a lot, obviously, um, I hope that you can hold on to that too. So,
Absolutely.
Neysha, thank you so much for coming on. I told for it's been over a year I've been trying to get you to come on and do a podcast with me. I
You
finally
finally
wrote
manipulated me. Virtual
finally
tournament.
did it. I did it. I did it.
No,
So,
anyone that knows me knows that I'm not a whole lot of a talker, but my personality changes when I'm passionate about something. And Bible quizzing is definitely an area I've been passionate about. And so you can get me talking when it comes to Bible quizzing.
100%. I'd love to talk to your husband too, because he's a fantastic coach as well. He's
Absolutely.
involved, and I have to say, POA played Messiah. Streamed Messiah last
Sure
week for
did. Easter
Easter, and
Sunday nights.
and I'm pretty sure I saw him. Did I not?
That was John the
John the
Baptist.
Baptist.
Absolutely.
It was great to see
And I
Bill.
was back in music ministry during those
Hmm.
days. So you may have heard a little music from me.
Oh my goodness, those were the days, huh? It's so crazy.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much again. It's so good to have you on and to talk to you. You're one of my oldest Bible quizzing friends, and I say that as in our tenure together, not your age. No, you're not.
Yeah, I
You're
see you
not my
poking
old.
at me. I poked at you at the beginning, and now here we go.
No. You're a fantastic coach and a mentor for me and mine, and I appreciate you and all you've done for quizzing, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Absolutely.
So I hope you have a good night. Have a good
You
one.
too.